Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ari Horie. I'm actually from Hiroshima. I grew up in Hiroshima City and raised by a single mom. Now, some of you might know how it's like to be single children in Japan. It's considered as a stigma. You might actually be self-serving and considered as selfish, versus here in the United States considered as independent thinker. That's where my life kind of started. Today, I would like you to take a moment, look around. Can you say hi to neighbor? Oh, she's making us say hi. So one of the things, we all come in with certain looks and behavior, the way we talk, and we make a judgment. And somewhere I heard we make that judgment for a second. And something there's about women. We haven't been a role model in the business world. You don't see many of us on the cover of a magazine or newspaper. And this is where not only about our work, to give us skills and confidence building and network to bring a successful business, but us individually as a woman or men realizing some of the unconscious bias. And the reason why I ask you to look around, I'm sure there was something you made a conclusion about people around you, right? So I would like to ask, how many of you are actually entrepreneur here? Okay. Do they look like entrepreneur in the typical Silicon Valley? Do I look like typical? No. How about, how many of you are students here? Student, half of them. Great. So you notice, typical Silicon Valley look is, what is it, sandal and shorts and hoodie. And somebody told me, if a woman does that, does it look powerful? Probably not. It looks kind of, wow, she just had a really bad day. She didn't do a makeup or want to cover her hair. And a black man, if they wear it, what do you think, right? This is a world we live in. It's unfair, maybe. There's an unconscious judgment that we have, and we want to take you through. Those thoughts led me into Women's Startup Lab. This is a part of Kyoto. I would like to have you take a moment, open up your mind, and think about all those judgments you have about your culture, about you, right? For example, when I grew up as a girl in Japan, I was supposed to be polite. I was supposed to be nice. When I expressed my anger, my mom said, that's not what you're supposed to do. And it's the same for men. But there's a certain things I was expected to do. So even look at yourself, what those values are. And if you look up and open up your value, there's something you see. And there's a creature called Totoro that only shows up in the eye of children. How many of you know Totoro? That's good. So Totoro only shows up from the children. And so if you are already, I hope you see Totoro now in the picture. Just a reminder. So this is one of the publicity that I'm getting right now. It looks great, isn't it? There's a moment I was like, wow, I'm on all this. But inside, being only child in Japan, always felt isolated. I felt really scared. But it doesn't look that way. And some people, first time meeting with me and said, wow, you have an extraordinary life. But truth is, inside my jumpsuits, I'm no different than anybody else. How many of you would recognize yourself and would raise his hand, said, I'm extraordinary? Wow. I recently was a keynote speaker at the South by Southwest. We have about 1,000 people in the room, and I was surprised how many of folks raised a hand. And maybe this is the group that also reflect the focus. Asian culture, maybe Japan, nobody raised a hand. And I wouldn't do that too. I would have never raised my hand, say extraordinary. But I'm many way ordinary. Many way. I'm scared speaking in front of people. There's no way I would ever run the company, nor thought ever I will make it to anything. I have a bad habit that I don't want to tell anybody. But little extra we do that brings the words extraordinary. Many people ask me, tell me, Ari, why you started Women Startup Lab? And I didn't have a really good reason. But then I started digging. And I would like to share some short story about some of my experience. When I was actually 6 years old, 1年生, right? Because my mom was so worried that I was so timid, and knowing that I was only child and divorced mother's daughter, that she knew I would be picked on. And instead of having me deal with that and trying to pretend I fit in, she took extraordinary step, little extra, which is forcing me to wear pink backpack. I was unknowing as a child because I wanted to fit in. Do you remember when you're first grade? The first developmental stage in that age is trying to fit in. You start having awareness around. And I had to wear this pink backpack among all those red backpack children, or black backpack in this case. And every day I come home being teased, and she said, well, that's their opinion. That's their perception. And she wouldn't bear with my sadness. She just go, ding, that's not truth. That's their opinion, and you're better than that. But of course, when you're kids, you don't understand it. But with this kind of reinforcement, it is okay to be different. It is okay to stand out. And throughout my life, I try to fit in, but that wasn't necessarily the case. This lesson is not only we try to fit in, we women sometimes are 1% out of the rest of the room in the tech world. We feel so minuscule. But instead of trying to fit in, there's maybe something you can step back and look at who you are that you can actually embrace it. What it's like to be a woman. I just had a neurologist came into our office to give a talk about how brain functions are different for men and women. That's one of the things that we talk about. It's not that we're different in a negative way or any different way that we're better than men, but it's just knowing how we operate differently. Embracing differences. What does it look like? Taking a chance is one of the traits that many entrepreneurs has. What is your taking a chance moment? What do you think other people's taking chance? Is it big things like quitting a job and starting a startup? That seems to be the theme here in Silicon Valley. But I'll share my little story. When I was 17 years old, 高校2年生, I wasn't a good English student. And there's no way I would ever apply to exchange student program. But I was very focused, competitive volleyball player, athlete. But one day, coach came in and said, we're not playing anymore. I'm done with it. And Sunday, I left with nothing to do. And my English teacher said, Ari, why don't you apply for exchange student? And this was the year exchange student program wasn't that popular like these days. Maybe 1 or 2 students apply every year. So it was a big deal. I didn't want to stand out, so I actually applied and didn't tell anybody. It was a secret. And I took a test in Hiroshima. And they told me to go to this building on Saturday. So I did. Turns out, every single instruction was in English. It was a TOEFL test. And I have no idea that's what first of all, I didn't know what it was TOEFL, because I didn't really prepare to apply for the exchange student program. I just filled up application and I show up. So I said, I'm going to America, and why do I have to know all those English? It's not the point, like missing a point. Anyway, so I did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, everything, seriously. At least to spell out my name. About 2 weeks later, I get a call. She said, Miss Horie, the result came back. And I said, yes. She said, you have 330 points. And I said, wow, I got 330 points. I was really amused. And I was excited. Then she goes, well, actually really, really low, because just because you wrote the name, they give you 300 points. And I said, oh, okay. And this is where different way of taking a chance, right? Instead of accepting what people said, you're not good enough for this particular case, right? Obviously, you usually have to have at least a 550. I do little extra things. So at that point, I said, well, wait a minute. Nobody explained to me why I have to be there, and I'm going to United States so that I can learn how to speak English. So why are you giving me English test? And she thought about what I said. She said, okay, I will talk to management. And so she decided to send me to Kyushu region competition. So I passed Hiroshima section. And they ask various English questions, and there is a personality section. They ask, well, you're going to go to America, and everybody speaks English, and how are you going to make a friend? And everybody was quiet, like you guys. Nobody raised a hand. So I was quiet, and I felt bad for somebody who was presenting. So I raised a hand, and I said, I don't speak English, but I will just smile. And she just laughed, and so why? And I said, well, if I can speak, and if I keep smiling, sounds really silly, but maybe she will at least let me stay in the circle to keep the mood up. And they might see I might be friendly enough that they might start talking to me. So I guess that's one of the survival skill I try to express. And she said, okay, that was great. And then guess what? I passed the regional. How lucky am I, right? But this time is no joke. Now we're at the Tokyo. My mom thinking, there's no way you're going to pass, and it's a waste of money. And I said, well, this is a great opportunity to go to Disneyland. And she said, all right. So we go to Tokyo, and it's just about, I believe about 200 students was selected out of 4,000. I forgot what was the number. And I go through testing, and there's 4 panels, and my mom's sitting there. And they ask, do you have a sister? And I said, I eat sushi. And so I obviously didn't really understand what was going on. But I was thinking, well, I'll give it a shot, give my best. And so one of the things is, yes, I might not be qualified, but instead of take myself out, I kept myself going. And I kept my illusional optimistic attitude, whatever you might call it. But I did not let myself say no. And the final day, they start listing a name, and there I saw my name coming up. And I just thought that they were thanking all the people who came. But turns out that everybody started crying. So those are students who did not pass. And it meant so significant that they have to embarrass about the fact that they didn't pass, that they felt moralized and they were really upset about not getting in the program. And at that point I realized, oh my gosh, I passed, so what am I going to do? And in the meantime, my mom thinking, gosh, my only child's going to go to America. I haven't done my job to train her to be proper Japanese girl. That's my excuse. I just blame it on her. But the point was, I continued to go on, and this gentleman came by and said, Miss Horie, can I have a word? And I was like, here you go again. So he said, your score and your English skill was quite terrible. And we have seen many other students who had great skill sets, and we sent them over last 10, 15 years. And turns out those students didn't do well. And we're actually sending you there because you're open, because you're not afraid to make a mistake. And that was the key. Right? When you put yourself out there, let other people to tell you the secret. Never have you be the one to take the opportunity out. And that was something I learned, that they said that is a secret of many exchange students to succeed, and just to continue to go on and be able to mingle with the people instead of being afraid of making a mistake. And I think this is something many of the Japanese folks relate to, right? And being an entrepreneur is just knowing that you are trying. Every day you are out there doing something is a blessing. And until the last dime is run out, you can call, I'm a successful entrepreneur, because you're still here making things happen. During this life experience, I profoundly felt the gift that I received from other people. When I was 17, I came here as an exchange student. So many people helped me to survive and thrive. As I go through my entrepreneurship journey, there's so many times I don't even know what I don't know. I feel like I keep doing the same things, not going. And it's great when you have a great advisor, and they often say, so how can I help you? You hear that all the time. But the truth is, if you're an entrepreneur for the first time or doing some new things, you don't know what you don't know. We have the internet, we have YouTube. If you know what you don't know, you can go out there and bring your knowledge into it. And that's where, when you have other people around you learn about you, and then they start telling you the things that you should know, and it helps you to grow. So we call this a Hito concept. Hito is two people leaning on each other, means human in Japanese. This is my favorite. So we're trying to find a Hito character and try to explain the concept, and I found the two oji-san here leaning on each other. Well, actually, I want to go back to Hito concept. So recently I gave a talk about my impact presentation. It's about you stepping in, doing a little extra to make other people extraordinary. I would like to share this story about Nicole. She is an entrepreneur. She went to hackathon. How many of you know hackathon? Most of the people? Those who don't know about hackathon is a group of engineers and business folks come together over the weekend, and about 24 hours or 48 hours, they build actual startup, hacking through it. And so Nicole was there, and so this 8-year-old girl stood up and made a pitch. And after that, the whole audience break off into the small group, but then they also select top 5 startup idea. In this case, 8-year-old girl walked around and she didn't get any support. Nicole had her idea, and she was already acquiring a couple other engineers, but she said, you know what, today I'm going to be a Hito. I remember what Ari said. So she stepped up for her and said, let's build a team. And she spoke up for her, and so they built the team for her, with her. And she sent me email saying that at the end of Sunday, when they pitched, they actually took first place. If Nicole did not step in for this girl, the little things she did, can you imagine how significant impact that happened on her, that 8-year-old girl? She saw the possibility that she can do this. But sometimes what you do, little things, could be so much higher meaning for other people. And Women Startup Lab, now I'll talk about my accelerator. We built our accelerator in 3 major pillars. Just like any other accelerator, we focus on building a company, right? You need the revenue, which direction it's going, that way, going down, hockey stick. Yeah, you hear that? We talk about finance strategy, all that good stuff. But also the middle section, leadership development. That's a really unique part of what we do. You know this at Stanford too, that you gobble up amazing knowledge. And you can even look all those past the videos and books and YouTube, right? And the 2 people get exactly same instruction, but 10 days later, do you notice the results is very different? They might have exactly $100 to start, but the result will be different. The difference is many, many things, but often it's a leadership, the character, entrepreneurship, how they drive their idea, how they create a vision and articulate in a way that other people join. Being an entrepreneur It's like going up Mount Everest without any tool, right? No money, no resources, and you expect it to produce extraordinary result. So it's not just the sheer number of how much money I have, therefore I have this much result. That's great, we can all do that. But at the end of the day, what makes it different too is the person who makes a decision. And the founder, or you, are the source of a creation. So we actually bring executive coaches who have experienced over 15 years of doing this to have a deeper conversation about your vision, your passion. Not only those coaches work with the individual founder, but we bring the founder together. Have you noticed sometimes you have this passion and you're so geeked out about it, and you try to tell your husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, they just don't get it. They don't get it, right? And you know that they really care about you and they actually know you, but something that's so important, other people who understand that same boat, that they're the only one who can understand it. And being an entrepreneur or CEO is a very, very lonely place. And you shouldn't expect your husband to understand that journey, no best friend. And it's really, really important to have a strategy for yourself to surround yourself with other entrepreneur who understands it. Now, this is where coming back to Women's Startup Lab. Most of the female entrepreneur demographics about 35 till 50. And most of women then marry and have children. So you can imagine they not only have to raise this brand new baby called startup, they also have a household to manage. So they have a different ball to juggle than a traditional role the men tend to have, right? And we see things differently. So one of the things, when I was running a startup, I noticed that many of female entrepreneurs, that they also wanted to join mini Accelerator. But one of the things they said was, I know I can get in because I have a result. But you know what? I don't want to be like those guys and hanging out, drinking a beer, and I feel like I'm left out. That's minor complaint. But more than anything, it was drop everything, hustle, go, go, go. And that's, of course, as an investor, you want that. Nothing wrong with it. But is this the only way to succeed? When you look at the economy, 80% of a business come from small businesses. It's not VC-funded company. Very small amount. But because we're in the Silicon Valley, we think every business has to be called a startup and have to be invested by VC. And my thoughts was, okay, women have to juggle, then they have to have another solution. So I said, well, maybe I'll take on. I will bring amazing network. I want to bring the right education. I want to resource them with other female entrepreneurs that remove some of the barrier and the funding. Also, if they have to take 6 months instead of 3 months to build a better company, so be it. So I did not start off with a PhD knowing how to do Accelerator. I thought I was going to Stanford. That would be great. Learn from you, Dr. Dasher. Would you accept me?
I don't think I need to. I don't think you need to.
But where I realized was instead of get caught up with, wow, I don't have a Stanford connection, a background, a Harvard, and I sold 2-3 company, I didn't have none of that awesome badges to convince people right away. I didn't. But I knew my skill is to bring people who has those to come into our accelerator to help those female entrepreneurs. So I said, I love being a background. I can bring people. I can connect to that. So the point is, we often try to figure out our career based on what you're good at and then try to do it. But also, you have to sit back and say, my case was, man, I'm 40. Maybe I'm halfway through or even past. I have a little time left. So I became strategical about, before I die, what can I do? I don't have time to create a new skill set. And of course, I learned along the way. And Women Startup Lab current program is a 3-month program, and we have over 19 instructor comes in that teaches over 90 hours of whole entire curriculum. That's a lot more than most of Accelerator. We also bring executive coaches. We have a weekly session, and each startup will be grouped within each cohort, so maximum 9 female entrepreneurs. So we usually run our batch with the 2 cohort, okay? And people ask me, what kind of founder do you accept? So we have an early stage company that needs to have a growth to prove their model, so going through a validation state. And next one is a funding track. Those are companies who already have some sort of a track record. They have revenue, they validate their idea, they might have some of the critical first corporate customer to take them to the next level. So this cases, they go through over 18 hours of major pitch training. Not just the VC training, VC pitch, but know how to take care of the Q&A, as well as how to do the napkin pitch. This is about drawing a concept to getting the audience to enroll, and then they start giving you a great idea. So there's a many way of presenting idea, and that's part of building a company, building a team, building an advisor. And then we have entrepreneurs in residence. And so those are the female entrepreneur who actually made it through. So they might be the youngest entrepreneur, sold the company, age of 21, Stacy, and Monique Gigi, who graduated our program and sold the company recently. And those are female entrepreneurs who are passionate about giving back to the community and to be a role model and be a mentor. We also launching a corporate program. We already have an ecosystem at our place, having this female entrepreneur together. We also accept corporate partner to have their own startup cohort. So we accept 9 companies that they choose, or we choose, and jointly we put together a group, and they go through our program side by side with other startup. To the right, corporate startup. So this case, instead of handling entire accelerator, they just send a team. So maybe 2-3 people from that particular company that they have a very interesting technology, but they don't know how to commercialize it. Sometimes it's get really sticky inside the politics that goes on at corporate. So it's better to have that idea being picked up and then throw in our area. Say, we're learning how to be entrepreneur-like. But truth is, you actually bring the technology out, and you get hustle bustle with the other entrepreneur to really test it out. A great innovation that happens inside the corporation. So we nurture that opportunity and process. And lastly, this global entrepreneurial training. This is something we're very, very excited and passionate about. Many of startup or even bigger corporation become certain stage of their growth, and they realize they might be biggest in their country, but not enough market for them to continue to grow and dominate the field that they're in. So many of European country startups said, from the get-go, we're already thinking about global, right? The thing is, they might know how to connect and create network and build the company in their culture. But when they go to Silicon Valley, they might be too humble. Or Japanese company who are dominating a market. And then when they try to go international, their management team are too Japanese-like, might not be well received in very much expressive leadership skill. So what we do is to take those management team or some of the leaders into a program and have them go through leadership and entrepreneurial skill curriculum together with the real entrepreneur. Now, can you imagine you're surrounded with all those female entrepreneurs? One of the instructors complained, oh my gosh, when we have so many women in the class, they share, they talk, they share the idea, and they love it, and sometimes you have to stop. But that's the environment. So our program is very much focused on creating this collaborative environment. We say it, we put it on the wall, and we actually design in our curriculum to have that collaborative session to happen. So people who's from, let's say, Japan or corporate folks come in, they are side by side with the real entrepreneur and be able to hack through some of the idea. And they learn to be more good way and aggressive and articulate and expressive. And you can read a book about it, but really the true growth happens when you are actually with somebody else and having that immersion learning. So that's what we do also. We have launched 3 batch. We're currently going through our 3rd batch, the 13th startup. And of last 9 months, we launched the 2 batch, and we have about 25 of them graduated. And we're happy to report that 2 of the company already been acquired. Cognia, the company from Australia, she's also a serial entrepreneur. She has an artificial intelligence company that's been bought by IBM. Monique Gigi, she's a mother of 3 here in Palo Alto. Built the company with bootstrapped money, which is $500,000. And golf app that had over 3 million users and mapped out 99% of a golf facility. And her app being bought by Back9 Media. They competed against the Golf Channel. And we have several other companies that are doing really, really well and receiving quite attention in the media as well. Now, I just want to check in time.
You're fine. Speak for another, however long you want to speak, and then we'll have Q&A. We run till 5:30.
Okay. So one of the things I've been asked to talk about is, what is the challenge? We have a challenge here in the United States, whether men or women, but specifically not having a woman in your workplace. You are handicapped for the result. I'll share one of the data. Not this one, I'll come back here. McKinsey have done a study about 5 years ago, taking top Fortune 100 company and realized that 2-3 female board executive on the board did 40% better in the return of investment. That's really high, 40%. They thought that was a mistake. So they did it next year, and then last year was their 5th year, it still came out 40%. Now, what's important here is not because women they're there for the result good, therefore women's better than men. No, that's not the point. When women there, which makes it good mix, and they tend to have ability to collaborate. Instead of compete, saying I have this idea, but they were really good at listening and say, what did you say about that? What about that and that idea together? And then they find that to be a great way to bring everybody's skills and idea together, and they think that's one of the reasons. The other things I have heard is men compete to win, but women collaborate to win. Maybe you can relate to some of the things you've seen. Recently, I went to Founder Institute's competition, and finalists were both women, which is very unusual. And I've noticed as soon as one went up and then the other came, and they go, oh, I like your shoes. Oh, I like your product. And it was something, this case was a vibrator. So I know you were like, what is it? Wireless vibrator with the technology, and the other one, it was 3D shoes. And they were already talking about, why don't we, your product and mine together, and its shoes moved. Anyway, that's what was happening on the stage, just like that. You don't see that much here. In a mini pitch event, men goes up and they try to say, I'm better than that. And it's a good skill to have. I'm not saying it's bad. But what I'm saying that there is a good in both way. And having a woman brings a different aspect of it. The other things I have heard is women are fire preventer than firefighter. So this one of the executives said, oh, we always had a problem. It's chaotic. And we finally got the money, and we were able to hire more people, and then we made an effort to hire more women. And he said, overall, our firefighting drill got reduced. A lot of things were planned, organized, prevented. She also started suggesting having a Christmas event, lunch get-together session, and it seems minimal, but they do a lot of things that not be noticed. So when the promotion comes, women often not being recognized for those huge contributions, but men who tended to take on the risk, they jump in. When something done, men were like, oh, I take it on. I don't know how, but I will take on. And I know, standardizing, but it is something that you can just open up your eye and say, yeah, I see. When I have a woman in our team, they do make things better and connect the dot better. Talking about Japan, this is the number. In the US, the college enrollment, more women enroll than men, and in Japan it's about 50-50. I don't know why it doesn't add up to 100, but. And after you graduate, actually I should show this one. So it's basically same data. So number one, it's about the same, and then number two in the middle, right? Employment, 90%, you graduate and most of the people get a job. Great, right? And then what happened here, the third section is about age of 35, women start having kids, and they don't come back in Japan. 70% of those women come back to workforce, and in Japan, and 30. That's a significant amount. So it's not about their ability or personality. I mean, if it was their personality, they don't want to work, whatever, then after graduate their college, they would be not going to the workforce, but obviously they do. And many of you probably can come up with many reasons. And I have been thinking about this issue quite a bit. Minister of Technology and Science, previous Minister Yamamoto have visited us. And so I had to think through those things. And this is Japanese. So instead of just thinking, oh, here in this entrepreneurship here, I said, well, maybe there's something we have to create. If I go to Japan and say, how many of you are entrepreneur? I don't think a Japanese woman will ever raise a hand. They think the definition of entrepreneurship is somebody who's been around and make revenue over a couple million. That could be their definition. And here in the Silicon Valley, it's very different. So it's really, really important that we don't just take US model and put that on Japanese culture. And also, same thing, the most of career development concept that we have developed in here or even in Japan, and then take that and then expecting women to run and work same way, it doesn't work either. So one of the things that just get a thinking going, this is what I suggested, is startup platform. Can women's startup lab can be any way helpful? And I was just introducing a concept. Instead of saying you have to be entrepreneur, go back to the workforce, but what is unique about you as a woman? There's an idea that you would come up with, the men wouldn't necessarily think, or they might not have a pain. I know many women say, oh, I have to think about dinner every meal. What am I going to make tonight? I hear that a lot from Japanese women. We're talking about. So those are not the kind of a problem the men wouldn't necessarily say. So because you're a woman, I'm just translating, because you're a woman, you have an idea that only you understand. Instead of saying big things, entrepreneur idea, but maybe you can start with the putti concept, putti entrepreneurship. And they tended to work on more social impact, something that they can relate to and see the change. And then they often talk about, I want to help others. So harnessing the idea of a collaboration, harnessing the idea of what kind of community do you want to work with? So instead of a pushing individual, it's about you helping them to have some sort of group and suggest them to come up with idea. And instead of saying, let's have a big plan, have a motto of, let's start tomorrow. And then decide what can you do if you have to start tomorrow. So suggesting the different thinking. In Japan, it's often been valued about being planned and having a consensus. I think that's a great value that I don't think it's going to go away. And having a group of people who wants to create innovation, and you have to have this reverse thinking of how we can create an idea, but doing different way. How could we change? I don't know. Many of you have a different idea, and I'm sure many of you thought of it. So one is structure change. That's something I can't do, but the government have to figure out so the people can start the business and they don't lose entire house and the family being in jeopardy on that, taking that risk. Not enough care industry for women to start the business. That's just one of the things I hear. And the second thing is the culture inside out. Not only outside the society recognizing and seeing more role model, but those who pursue the career as a woman, they get to ask themselves. One of the things I want to talk about is biggest mistake I think I see in Japan is just because they want to help women, they put women in one bucket. I think there's huge differences. There's women who pursue their homemaking, house career, being great mom. I think that's wonderful. And they do really well. I think world class in many ways. And there's women who really want to pursue their career. But often society just say, let's put the money, education, and the corporation has to put X amount of money to train the woman and promote them, blah, 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 and then they bundle women. And then what happened is this woman who wants to take care of that family, and they leave, and then their action being battled and put down by those working women and vice versa. So there's this happening. And I think in our society, we have to segment them. Now, when you start the startup, you don't just say, I'm going to sell this product to any woman. You say, no, not just a woman, but somebody who has income this level, and the personality is this, and they tended to think like this. So you go really narrow down on your profile, right? That's a basic of marketing and business growth. And I think it's important as a society, too, that we don't label and judge and penalize women for them to have that choice. On the other hand, men didn't really have a choice, right? Right now, and they can have a men's startup lab to stay home dad, I don't know. But the point is, men also came with this rule that they don't have a choice to become household CEO. So that's one of the things I thought we as a society have to be mindful about, not putting women all together, but allow women to have a choice and honor it instead of keep putting them on the same group. The third point I wanted to bring it up is creating new is easier than trying to fix the problem. I think when you look at many successful marketing campaigns, you notice they do something revolutionary, something new, and the people suddenly shift their behavior. Facebook was one of them, right? They show up, and they've been around, but if you logically try to think, people wouldn't have changed the behavior. But something new came, and the people changed their behavior and thinking, the way they relate. We couldn't have predicted that. So trying to change Japanese people in a certain way, and we have thousands of beautiful threads that made the way Japan work. And there's a lot of wonderful part of that, and I'm really proud of it. Right? That precision they have, the pride that they have, accountability, and being so responsible, honorable. There's so many beautiful things that Japan has that I admire. But sometimes it's not great when you're trying to take a risk. So what I'm trying to say here is when something new to happen, honor that what exists, but come up with something completely new language, identify something so that people actually change the behavior and thinking. So my last slide is, it's about you. It begins with you to bring the changes in the way that good for everybody. Good for her is good for you. And we're ordinary, but little step that we take that allow us to move to extraordinary moment. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you today. Thank you.
So Ari, thank you very much. I want to ask the first question. So the people who are in Women's Startup Lab, are a lot of the women people who've come from other countries moved here, kind of like you did, or are there special needs that they have, or special kind of patterns that you see among them that you wouldn't see among, say, homegrown people here?
Yeah, folks here has a lot of choice. I mean, talk about number of accelerators. I think every day there's a new accelerator popping up. So they have a lot of choice. What I've noticed over time, we start getting a lot of application from outside of Silicon Valley because they just don't see many other female entrepreneurs.
So that means the companies are still located somewhere else.
Correct.
Okay.
And then they're had enough success that they're thinking about expanding. And instead of going to some of the very hustle, bustle accelerator, they felt that, well, if I'm going to move to a different part of the world or part of the nation, I'd rather go into Women's Startup Lab where I have a great support structure to ease into the change.
Yeah. Okay. And so do you find that you're providing something different for them than you would for other entrepreneurs?
We have a nap room and nursing room. No, just kidding. No, we do really have.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's not like I study every single accelerator, but we're not an investment company. We don't invest in every single company, which means that we're committed for their long-term success. So in other words, we often work with their vision. Do you really want to sell the company? Or is this your dream company that you want to grow? And that makes a huge difference in how you help them to set their strategy, funding strategy. And so we don't just take them and consider them as a huge investment and tell them to have this 10x strategy. We actually step back and why did you start it? What matters to you? So we do a lot of passion work, leadership. Authentic leadership is a kind of new language that's emerging, but yeah. So that's what we do quite a bit.
Okay. Why did you choose this instead of doing another startup company yourself?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I had an edutech company that provides a platform for children to connect based on their profile and learn foreign languages through play. And I loved it, and there was a lot of great feedback. So I was working on it, and it wasn't public yet. I did closed beta. So that's one of the reasons. And I started doing Women's Startup Labs as a hobby. And I recently, 3 years ago, I lost my mom. And I saw her just disappear, and then she took everything with her. I mean, her knowledge and the personality, everything was gone. And I had this moment, I was like, wow, life is too short. And when I had this opportunity, seeing this hobby things, the Women's Startup Labs taking off, I made a specific choice to say, I want to live the rest of my life the meaningful, and I can make impact. And even though I loved my baby startup that I was working on, when I look at which one has a better opportunity for me to make a bigger impact, it was obviously Women's Startup Lab. Okay. And that's how I made the decision to let my baby.
That's a great rational decision, though.
And so that has been my journey.
Okay, one more for me. So I was on the review panel for a pretty heavy science and technology funding program in Canada. And it was a program where you would get people really at the full professor level and give them extremely large grants to go and work in Canada. And we had a really difficult time getting any women to do this. And one of the people who came in, who was a specialist in kind of, diversity and hiring, came in and pointed out to us that women tend to be very conservative in making big changes like that, especially in regard to their families.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's a special challenge in getting people into, say, the whole startup scenario, or are they already committed by the time you talk to them?
by the time I talk to them, they already have some sort of idea, and they have a validated idea. One of the things happen with the women is, I mean, we're one of the animal exist in the planet, and there's some DNA, and our job was to build the village, and so it was important for us to be somewhat conservative to protect the children, and so it's a part of our nature to think carefully, and our senses are a lot heightened to make sure to avoid any risk. Right? So it's the same things that even though they want that so badly, they tended to step back and say, am I willing to take that risk?
Yeah.
And in the long term, when you look at many of the female-led companies, they do really well.
Yeah,
so
they do.
The result
Actually,
does say the female entrepreneur. So one of the data is, out of all the VC-funded company, women-led company only 6%. That's really, really small, right? But out of those, their return of investment was 24% higher. So even though they might be not risk taker from pre-existed value, how we judge what is a high risk or not, but a woman tended to step back. So one of the solution is others saying that you can do it. And I've been trying to say, you need to, that's again going back to Hito concept, and be brave for others. You say, yes, she can do it. And they just need a little bit of nudge.
Okay. So let's open the floor to questions, and I've got maybe one or two later. Okay. But the floor is open. Go ahead.
How do you make your activity sustainable?
How our activity is sustainable. Yeah. What part of activity you specifically talking about?
I mean, your revenue model for your startup lab.
Okay. Currently, we generate the revenue from some of the small fee that we take from our founders. We also have several successful female entrepreneurs that send the money in to sponsor. So that's one of the revenue. And then we take quite a bit of revenue by providing our service to the corporate as well. So that's how we work. And we do have an investor that puts in money to invest, but that's not something we necessarily built our revenue model on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Where are you and the Women's Startup Lab physically located?
We are physically located in Menlo Park.
Okay.
Yeah, inside the Oryx building.
Which one?
Oryx building? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I saw your hand next.
So I'm a student here at Stanford. I'm interested to know, how did you make the transition from working at a big corporation to transitioning into entrepreneur?
How did I? Well, I love IBM. I have a couple people that works on my company too. There's something about how I learn about the professionalism, but there's a point I felt that this is not a good fit for me. One of the things, I was a so hands-on person. I wanted to try so badly for something, for me to have a conviction, yeah, this would work. I just couldn't take somebody was saying, you have to do it. And they logically explained, but it just frustrated me. And maybe part of traits, good and bad, as being an entrepreneur, you have a traits of being impatient. And I just couldn't deal with it. So just knowing who you are and own it and embrace it and then move on. And so that's what happened to me.
That's well said. I saw your hand.
What if you have some Japanese women entrepreneur among those who graduate from your lab or among your mentors?
Yes.
Very few.
Very few.
What's the reason why?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't seen any female entrepreneur come through. Except we did have one female entrepreneur. She came to me personally and said, I want to do this so badly. And when she started, she was so timid that some of the advisor questioned why I brought her in. But at the end of the whole session, she was one of the best entrepreneur out of the batch because she grew so much. She presented so confidently, articulately, and her business is still young because she started very early stage. But amount of the growth that we've seen was incredible. But yeah, we haven't gotten quite a bit of, actually nearly zero from Japan. But we do get a lot of applicant from Chinese applicant. Yeah.
Are you giving talks to young people in Japan a lot? Do you go and talk to them
I
a
would
lot?
love to,
Okay,
but
so this is from now on.
no,
Okay.
I'm actually
Okay.
visiting.
I was curious if you had reactions to your talk from young people there, how it would
Yeah,
compare.
I think, well, today I specifically talked about a lot about the program and the concept behind, but I usually give a lot more entrepreneurial motivational talk, which is very, very appropriate for the young generation as well. And earlier they realize their power and who they are, and they can thrive better. I tell my children that you can do something so special about you being 8 years old. Right? No more, what do you want to be when you grow up? We're unconsciously embedding that they are not good enough to create something. Like you have to wait for the moment when you grow up and someday. And so we try to say, what do you want to create today? There's something about you that you know about 8 years old or 11 years old. I have 2 boys, so yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk about the startup ecosystem in Japan? It seems to me from what I've read and I've seen that the millennials in Japan are not really interested in becoming salary men or women and with lifetime employment. And it just seems like they're ripe for becoming entrepreneurs.
I think there's a lot of movements going on. I'm probably not the best person to talk about. I have several people actually interaction with folks in Japan, but my understanding is some specific funds have been allocated, some younger college student forming entrepreneurship alliance among the college. And I've noticed some of the entrepreneur from different part of the world actually go in. And Dave McClure, who's the founder of 500 Startup, and he used to say this, that if you need to build your team, consider Japan. Right? They're cheaper and their skill is one of the best. That's what he used to say. And so, sure enough, I called a couple of my Japanese friends and I formed the engineering team for my startup in the past. Yeah. So.
You'll export this model, or would you do this in other Asian countries or around the world?
Yeah, because we believe in individual traits to be the fundamental, the success model, right? So I don't necessarily think that trying to make Silicon Valley and making Japanese to be Silicon Valley-like. But we're working on the model in the way that, in which what we do to each founder, they're bringing the goodness or the traits of Japanese in a way that they can thrive in the entrepreneur model. Right. So basically, we have a women startup lab concept, how we do collaborative work, and then bring that to Japan. And then those programs possibly, I'm obviously looking for the partner in Japan. And those local people run their own startup lab, and some of the best that actually get to a certain level that they're thinking about globalization, and they can actually come to our program to be globalized or network with folks in the Silicon Valley. Yes.
I'd like to follow up about this global entrepreneurship program that you're doing. So a company sends a group of people to the lab. Do they do the same program that people at the startup company do?
Yes, very good question. There's some of the challenges that they have might be slightly different. So we have 2-3 classes that specifically how to thrive in the politics of bureaucracy, right? That's slightly different. And then what kind of leadership you have to thrive in that, right?
Yeah.
That's different. Entrepreneurs, we get to do whatever we want to do, but that's different challenges. So we do have those classes, but the best part about
finding levers for large organizations, yeah.
And maneuvering through, and I think IBM taught me that as well, but not videotape now. So yeah, so most of the classes are same, and the part that we really think is important is the immersion program.
Yeah.
Not teaching what we think they should and it's just silo education to them, but they're actually not only brains-on, we call brains-on and hands-on model. So they're learning a lot of stuff from the instructor and all the interaction, but a hands-on actually doing a project with other entrepreneur. And that moment they know how other entrepreneurs think so differently and quickly, and know they know how to cut the corner, because I only got $100 left or 1 week left, and you have to be really nimble, and then you have to learn to let go, right? So that's something people tell you, but you don't know what degree you have to be rigorous about cutting things. So that's something you learn from being with other entrepreneurs.
So have you gotten any feedback from the sponsoring companies yet?
Well, we have a 2-3 company that we're working with, and we close one for sure. They're already on board, and the other one on its way.
Okay.
And
So this is still in the startup phase?
yeah.
Okay.
But we've been doing our program for a while, and it's been great to have those corporations actually coming, and we do quite a bit of work together, so it's been wonderful.
I ask because companies say they want more entrepreneurship, but you wonder if they really know what they're asking for.
Actually, I want to share. So when they came in, they said, I want to have innovation. And the word innovation meant so differently for them, right? So for them, innovation is a specific technology, and that's innovation, versus for us, innovation was taking, whether great idea or not great idea, great technology or not, you take it and then you think through and make innovation to, at the end of the day, you generate the revenue. And so when they say, I want to have innovation, I want an innovation thinker, we really have to break down, like I have to interview over and over, what does the result look like? How would you recognize you're getting what you need from us? And so it began with management team getting involved and helping them to really articulate what do they mean by their innovation looks like versus this company's innovation look completely different, right? So
that's
great.
Part
of the process. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In spite of your name, Women's Startup Lab, to what extent are men involved in this process?
Very good. Let's see. My team, for example, we're a 5-people team, and we have 2 men in our team. And our curriculum, all company have to be woman-led company. So there have to be female co-founder or female CTO. And the curriculum, so that we call Innovation Lab, those 90 hours of all those classes, that's open to public. So we offer those classes to some of our partner startup organization, and we bring men. Because at the end of the day, we want to do what we think is a thriving environment, but we also want to work with men as well. And so that's why I bring Hito all the time, because it's names a Women's Startup Lab, but it's really about integration and bringing people together. And for the corporate program, we do put the plan together that if you don't have a pipeline of all those women employees to put it in, the first year is a 30%, and by third year or certain third batch, you need to have at least have a 50-50 employee going through our program. So it's something we have put stake on the ground together with each company and trying to move forward to really create integration together.
Okay, great. Right behind your question, I saw you. Yeah.
I think in Japan, what women startup job is very excellent, very precious. But on the other hand, I think it is very, very hard. So if you have what you keep in mind to complete both starting up your job and child care, could you tell us?
Can you repeat the question? So what advice to having a startup and balancing your family life? I think just like any startup, you have a limited everything, right? You have a limited money and resource. And in Japan, even more, the people aggressively tell you that you shouldn't. Or this is a stupid idea. Or if you're not making money, then you're suffering your family. So you have all those pull. So when you start something and when you have family, you express often how happy you are and why this is important. And doing own PR, right? If you're going to be CEO of the company, no matter what happened, you have to stand up and convince other people that this is worth it, right? And it begins with family too. And then sometimes they're the hardest, right? Because they see you in the exactly same way. Yeah. So articulating that and tell them some of the goal too, so that they can actually see, oh, mommy's doing 6 months in, and I remember my boys used to say, Mommy, when are you going to make more than $10? Because each meeting at the beginning was $10. And at some point he said, oh, I know, daddy makes a lot of money. You make a lot of a company. That's your thing. So I don't know, it's a good thing. But, kids picks up. And I articulate them. Today I'm going to a meeting, and I do this because this. And now they're proud of me, and they will say, Mommy, when you come in, to me, you represent, he said, courage and passion. And so I was really surprised that he picked that up and he articulated to me. So anyway.
So you talked a little bit about conservatism in decision making, but one of the things that hasn't showed up at all in your presentation is fear of failure. And do you see that as particularly relevant, or is there a reason that it wasn't in your presentation?
Fear of failure, it's so ingrained in our culture. I mean, sorry,
And
our
when you
culture
say
is a
our, who do you
Japanese,
mean?
yeah, Japanese
Okay,
culture. I would like to take a moment to think about it, and not that it's easy to say be brave, right? But there's a difference. Is that I think there's a being brave and a courage, and I didn't know this. I learned recently. Being brave is someone who's taking action without fear. And a courage is somebody who's taking action while being aware of fear. And I think it's a conversation about courageous. What does it look like? In American culture versus in Japanese culture will be very different. And even if I experienced myself, that I wanted to be courageous all the time in Japan, being athlete. And I often felt so bounded because my failure will affect everybody else's losing a face, and that was huge, right? So one of the things that we can begin to break those thread. I don't think we will ever change that. That's a beautiful part of our culture as well in many ways. I would bring as a group. Doing it individually is so difficult, and having a club, mother's club, a women's club, whatever you want to call it, and making an effort to have a woman being out there and having a conversation about taking on the project together. And they actually, one of the lessons that I learned, I try to practice, is being with fear, being a friend with fear. And I have to often deal with fear all the time. I was freaking out when I had to be on the stage at South by Southwest giving a talk. And instead of saying I'm not fearful, I said I'm so afraid, can you be next to me? So I did like a little cycle, but the point was in the group and talk about the failure looks like and talk about it and how to be with it and how you control it. And that helps that unsaid, unconscious, tremendous fear to be removed. And then out of that, you take action. Then those fear gets skinnier and more manageable. So one of the things that we deal with at the Women's Startup Lab is the fear is there, and the more you learn to manage it, and you have a better control over, and having it, recognizing and talking about it, and be really sure about the step you would take, it turns that into the confident. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I think Women's Startup Lab is really fortunate to have a very courageous person because your example really demonstrates incredible courage to, come over here and to take these steps out from big company into startup companies, from startup companies into this role. Thank you.